What's up, Steam It? This is Luke Stokes. It is Monday, May 14th. Is that right? Yeah, May 14th, and I am chilling in my backyard. I'll give you a little quick tour here. Working from the hammock today, and I'm thinking about doing a video that I've been considering and pondering for a long time. I've been thinking about the importance of long-term rational self-interest as opposed to short-term value extraction, as just getting as much as you possibly can as quickly as you can. Now, when you look into these two strategies from a game theory perspective, there's a lot to be said about what works best. Like if you dive into tit for tat and these different other gaming strategies, whether or not there's memory involved, whether or not it extends beyond just the initial interaction is actually really important in terms of determining which strategy is most profitable, which strategy is the most winning strategy. So thinking about this, it's important to consider, what do we believe STEAM will be? Do we think, and I'm going to talk about this specifically in terms of STEAM and voting bots, buying votes, self-voting. These all I look at as value extraction mechanisms that, done at a certain extent may be fine, but done to an extreme can potentially kill the platform or significantly decrease the value for everyone on the platform. I don't think that self-voting or paying vote bots all the time or anything like that, or buying votes, is a Nash equilibrium as far as the very best outcome for every possible participant on the network. And the reason for that, I'm going to link to a bunch of resources in this post, but I think the reason for that relates to a vote is supposed to be a signal, and if it becomes noise, then it loses its value. And there's endless debates about this. We could talk about the linear reward curve. We could talk about curation rewards needing to be more. We could talk about a separate rewards pool for downvoting, which I actually think is a potentially good idea. I have some concerns about it as well, but that could actually help with some things. There are a number of technical changes that can be made to the Steam blockchain, and then promoted on STEEMit.com as well, that would improve the situation. And I think those are all great, and they should continue to be explored and discussed for sure. I also think that even content discovery is kind of lumped into that problem. People pay for voting bots often just because they want to get the visibility, they want to get the promotion of their post so they can get new followers, so they can get on the trending page, that kind of thing. Unfortunately, as we all know, it changes the value of the content that we see on the trending page. If that value is there not based on signal, not based on proof of brain individuals saying, yeah, I like that post and I think it should be a number one post, then it diminishes the perception value of the whole ecosystem. People come to STEEMit.com and they look at trending and they're saying, well, this is just a bunch of crap. It's all, why is this the best content on the platform? Which clearly it's not. It's just that's the content that got to the forefront because somebody paid, $100 or $150 for a voting bot to get their content up there. So I get all that, and I get even self-voting. I get why people want to get returns on their investment. I get why people like Hajin post 10 times a day and extract as much possible value as they can. What I'm going to argue for is that they're not thinking in terms of long-term rational self-interest. I'm going to argue that there might be a better way. Instead of saying, how much value can I extract as quickly as I can, as much as I can, maybe instead they could think in terms of, okay, here's my investment, here's how much I've put into this system, and what is that investment going to be in 5 years, in 10 years? And based on that, how can I increase my profits? And if we're just thinking short term, saying, well, I can extract this amount of money in the next week, then we might actually be severely limiting our overall long-term profits. For example, if another competitor comes along, maybe on EOS, maybe on another platform, and they build something amazing that solves some of these problems, as far as content discovery, as far as value extraction, people extracting more value than they create, that kind of stuff, then the entire investment goes to zero. So the idea is, yeah, okay, great, you extracted some money up front, but long term you lost out on a potential massive increase in value if the STEEM token goes way up in value, because we're not only the first on the market, first to market, but also the most, hopefully the one that's innovating with the most experience, the most experienced team, all that kind of stuff. So what I want to argue for is, when we're seeing a lot of self-voting, when we're seeing a lot of value extraction, when we're seeing a lot of vote bot usage, let's try to start a dialogue to say, what if instead of taking my entire Steam Power investment or my entire voting ability and thinking in terms of maximum short-term wealth extraction, what if instead we say, okay, here's what makes sense. I'm going to vote for this stuff that benefits me. And I'm going to think in terms of how I'm using my investment to increase the long-term value of my investment. I'm going to link to a whole bunch of posts, or a whole bunch of accounts and projects that I think are valuable for the long-term health of Steemit. These are, in many cases, very incredible projects that you don't get a financial reward for supporting them. They stop spam. They stop a lot of different problems on the blockchain, and they have some really interesting approaches. And I look at it as a responsibility as a token holder to support these things. It's kind of like when you live in a place, you're forced to pay taxes via threats of violent force, because stuff needs to get done. Like, we like roads and things like that. And what I'm hoping for is we can move to a voluntary society. We can move to, no masters, no slaves. We can move to a situation where people voluntarily recognize the need to be part of a community and say, oh yeah, I benefit from the value there, so I'm going to support it. This is where voluntary contributions, this is why things like Patreon and charities, things like this make sense, because people recognize, oh, that's valuable. I want to support that. I want it to continue. And so if we look at Steemit and the Steem blockchain as not just a value extraction mechanism, but as a system for long-term sustainable value growth, I think we're going to do much, much better. And I think we're going to have a much more healthy community. I think we're going to have a much more stable and really valuable investment over the long term. If people were to come to our site and look at trending and see very great content that was actually backed by proof of brain, individuals with their own value saying, this is great content, I want to make sure everyone else sees this, and when they come to steemit.com, I want this to be the quality of content they expect and that they want to see. And that's why they should not only join the community, they should participate in the community, continue commenting and posting, and even hopefully, ideally, invest in the Steem token that drives all of the value the entire community enjoys. And that can only happen if they see the value in the system. And that a big part of that comes from steemit.com and through the trending page. So essentially what I'm asking for is, let's not use voting bots. Let's put them out of business by not using them. If there are no customers, nobody will use them. I understand the desire to promote your content. I get that. I want a promoted system. The promoted tab, clearly no one uses. It's not a good system. I want a system potentially where you can have content in line with your existing feeds that you opt into, and maybe even get rewarded for, viewing the ads, essentially ads, for lack of a better term, those posts that are promoted. Because that's really what they are. They're ads. And so I would love to see something along those lines, something that doesn't actually change the value of the money you extract. Like, you don't get to say it's a $250 or $300 or $500 post just because you spent a whole bunch of money on a bot. You only get to say that if the community says, yeah, we all think that that's worth that much. And more importantly, those who have invested most in the system, those with the most Steem power, those are the people that have the most to lose if this entire thing goes to zero, if the value that we create doesn't last and isn't sustainable for the long term. So I'd love to see ways that people could promote their content without using bots, and we can be talking about that and working on that. I do know that some bots are better than others. Some bots are actively working on whitelisting contributors who are providing value. That's great. Some bots are trying to ensure that those who use it don't actually make a profit. That's actually pretty cool as well. So there's a lot of solutions out there, but the most important thing from my perspective is that we're thinking about this in terms of a psychological mindset, a change and a shift in the way we think about things. I just recently read a book. Sean King, my friend, recommended a great book called Towards a Zero Marginal Cost Society. And it talks about the collaborative commons and how essentially we can, if we can protect the commons and have collaborative ownership of it in a way that we understand the long-term value of it, we all benefit. We all do better. And it's actually very possible. A lot of the concerns that people have of, the tragedy of the commons, it doesn't add up. Like when you look at history, you look at these different places where the commons have thrived and been very successful. It can work. You just have to have a group of people that protect it and value it enough to protect it. And I think we can do that. I think it's going to start with, honestly, more downvoting. It's going to start with more flagging. It's going to start with people saying, you know what, this is value extraction, it's not value production. I'm going to have to disagree with you on rewards here, and I'm going to have to downvote this. And we have to get over our emotional response to that. This is not our money. It's potential payout. Downvoting is part of the system, and it's there by design. And yes, it means that the person who downvotes loses some curation rewards. They lose their voting strength power as well. They get to do fewer votes that day. And that's okay. I mean, to me, that's a role and a responsibility of a STEEM power holder to protect their investment. And by doing that, they're thinking in terms of rational self-interest. That's my argument. That's my perspective. And I want to have a dialogue about this. I want you guys to start thinking about this and give me some feedback on it from your perspective. If you were to use a bot, or you were to self-upvote, or you were to get some ridiculous vote on your post, and you're like, man, I didn't even think that was a great post, would you be willing to downvote yourself? Let alone like upvote your own content. Would you even be willing to downvote it if that was what was the best option for rational self-interest for long-term value of your investment? I would, and I think others should as well. I am gotten to the point now where I don't upvote any of my own root posts. Occasionally I'll upvote a comment if I want to get it up to the top, but even now you can go change your settings, decline payout, and upvote it full power, and it'll jump right to the top. That's cool. I want more people to do that as well. And the reason I'm taking this personal stance on self-voting is, again, I don't want to add more noise to the system. I want to have more signal. And I think that the more that we think about the long-term value of STEAM and how that's represented by steemit.com, I think the more we're going to try to participate in proof of brain, the more we're going to try to ensure the very best content floats to the top and gets promoted through our votes. And our voting strength is going to be that much more valuable to us, because now we're like, oh man, every time I vote up great content, I'm actually increasing the potential long-term value of my holdings. And every time I just try to extract wealth through some random comment, I'm potentially endangering the value of my investment. So, if you're just a minnow just getting started, or you're just barely a dolphin, this conversation isn't really for you. Because your votes don't really matter a whole bunch. If you're going to self-upvote or use a bot just to kind of get some traction, get started, I understand that. I don't think your little vote is going to really make a huge impact on the overall long-term value of the platform. You're not the people most people are upset about. Those that people are upset about are those who are using massive farms of fake accounts, thousands of accounts, and they're upvoting them a couple pennies, and they're extracting as much value as they can. And those who have a ton of STEAM power, and they're just, voting up content that is most of the community disagrees with. And then when somebody tries to flag it or downvote it, there's this massive downvote flag war. And it's like, nobody wants that. No one wants to participate in that. No one wants to be in a community where that's the norm, where everyone just cusses each other out and flags each other. That's toxic. No one wants to be a part of that. So this conversation is really for the major investors. It's really for the STEAM power holders and those who are producing a lot of content that gets a lot of votes, and trying to get people to think in terms of rational self-interest, long-term rational self-interest, as opposed to short-term irrational value extraction. And I think we can improve the system just by improving the way we think. It starts with us. The technology and the tools are just an attempt to kind of circumvent the problems. But they're all gamified. They're all going to be gamed. Any solution we come up with from a technical standpoint will, I believe, eventually be gamed as well for those who are not thinking in terms of their own long-term rational self-interest. So I want to start this dialogue. I want to try to get community support for people to use their downvote correctly to protect their investments and to upvote content that is valuable, and to hopefully not self-upvote and not use voting bots as much when that is a potential risk of the value of their investment over the long term. So anyway, that was a whole lot. I'm curious to know what you think about it. Thanks for joining me in my backyard in my hammock as I'm chilling here trying to get some work done, and I'd love to know what you think. All right, talk to you later.